Thank you, Roger Gimblett, for joining us today to talk to us a bit about your life working as an actor, writer, and director.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks very much.
Now, I understand you had an early interest in the artistic career growing up in New Zealand.
Well, yes, well, I'm actually from a small town in New Zealand called Invercargill, and my parents were very much involved in the local theatre scene there. My father was a set designer and stage manager, and my mother was in the chorus of the local operatic shows, so that's actually how they met. So I've basically been hanging around theatres since the age of, before I could walk, basically. So that's how I became involved in the theatre initially.
Ah, excellent. And it wasn't just your parents who fostered your interest in acting and writing and directing as well. You had some early interest in your school life, is that right?
Yes, I mean, the small towns in New Zealand, they all have a repertory company and things of that nature. I wasn't a singer, so I was never involved particularly in musicals, but I was involved in plays at school and obviously with the local repertory society as well. They did a number of Shakespeare's that I was involved in. And so that was really the introduction to it, but it was also a lot of my involvement was really from trailing around after my father, who was building large sets for big musicals and things like that, and I became more aware of the lighting and the sound and all the technical aspects as well as those aspects involved in being on stage.
Excellent. And at university, did you continue your interest in the artistic world?
Yes, at university I was involved with a theatre called the Globe Theatre in Dunedin, which is a really cute, tiny little theatre, and also with, again, the local repertory society in Dunedin. I was involved with them for a period of time as well. So I did a few plays there, and I also directed a couple of musicals while I was at university. I was in one, and all my songs were cut before opening night. But the subsequent year, I said that I would be interested in directing the show for them. So I ended up directing, I suppose, at the age of 22, a musical called Naughty Marietta, which sounds slightly dodgy, but was actually quite a famous operetta, and it actually went incredibly well. We were able to get a great cast, and so that was sort of my introduction to directing. Really was pretty much by accident, and at 22 directing a fairly large cast operetta.
And what were you studying at university?
I studied law and arts at university. I did an English major. I wasn't absolutely convinced that I wanted to be a lawyer when I started, but it was the first year that they introduced a sort of a limit on the numbers of people who could be taken into the course. So I actually got in, much to my surprise, after the first year, and I thought at that stage that probably I should continue to do it. And I did enjoy law, but I was very glad that I had the arts side, because that was one of my interests, and that sort of kept me sane as I was doing the law and the arts subjects together. And
did you end up pursuing a career in law?
Yes, well, I started off doing, I did 3 years as a criminal family lawyer, basically doing a wide range of stuff in general practice back in Invercargill in New Zealand. And that was, I enjoyed it. I was doing a lot of court work, and it was good, but it was pretty full on, and I wanted to go overseas and travel, so I ended up doing 2 years in England. And while I was there, I was working for a theatre company called Stolnos Theatres, and that used to own 12 West End theatres, including the Theatre Royal Drury Lane and the London Palladium. So it was an amazing opportunity. I'd get lots of free tickets, and so I took in a lot of theatre, and it was a great change, being in that industry, having been working as a lawyer prior to that. So it was a really interesting career break, doing 2 years working in a West End theatre company. Then I came back and moved to Sydney, Australia, and I worked for an ombudsman's office initially, and then with the Law Society of New South Wales, effectively investigating complaints against solicitors, and I've been there for 15 years, and I've just moved to the Office of the Legal Services Commissioner, which is similarly involved in the regulation of the legal profession. So, but I've been continuing my involvement in the theatre in my spare time.
I see. And what kind of things have you been achieving in your time in Sydney theatrically?
I've been involved with a number of different outfits. I started off directing musicals with a couple of societies, and then I became re-involved in the Genesian Theatre, which is a small theatre in a converted church in Kent Street in the central city. It's a terrific place. It's been going for about 70 years, and it's also where Brian Brown and Baz Luhrmann and Judy Farr and lots of well-known names started off there. It's an amateur theatre, but it's a lovely, quaint little building and is very well supported. So I've been involved very actively there as on the board and as the theatre director, and I've directed about 12 full-scale shows for them over the years. And I also set up my own company and produced a production of Hamlet, a production of Brideshead Revisited, an adaptation of the novel, and a play by Alan Bennett called 40 Years On. So I have done my own work on those, and I've also produced a couple of shows for other people as well. So it's been a pretty busy time.
Are there particular works that stand out as ones that you're particularly proud of?
The plays I did off my own bat were very challenging, because when you're working with a company, you have all of those support networks that are in place, whereas when you're staging a show on your own, it's much more of a challenge. But it's very, very rewarding, and both Hamlet and Brideshead Revisited I thought we had terrific casts, and the feedback that we got was really, really good. So that was good. 40 Years On, which was the Alan Bennett play, I had a cast of school kids, which was quite difficult to assemble and to make sure they were all there at the right time. So that was a fairly exhausting show, and we did it in a very expensive venue, and it probably wasn't my finest hour. But the other show that I have been doing for a number of years now is a play called Not About Heroes, which is about Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon. And I've produced that. I play the role of Siegfried Sassoon. I've produced that. We did it at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra, and we did a season at the Sydney Opera House. We took it to Tasmania, and we took it to Christchurch, New Zealand as well. So it's a terrific, moving play about World War One. And with the centenary of the war, it's been sort of an apposite time to be doing it, basically. So that's probably been the highlight of my time in Sydney, was working on that particular play. It's a really moving, wonderful play, and there's the three of us, myself, the chap who plays Wilfred Owen, and the director, love working on it, and we've got a great team spirit, and it's been fun. So yeah.
So it sounds like you've been spending thousands of hours of your life in the artistic pursuits. You've been dedicated as an actor, as a director, and a writer. Why haven't you been pursuing this full time?
Well, it's very interesting, I think, as to why I haven't worked professionally in the theatre, apart from the 2 years that I was in the West End. But I think, coming from a small town in New Zealand, there was a general feeling that making a career in the arts was very, very difficult. And also I wasn't absolutely sure what area I wanted to go into. I'd done quite a bit of acting. I'd done a lot of writing of plays and things, and a lot of directing. But I really hadn't determined, if I was going to have a career, what it would be. So I sort of became this sort of dilettante, going from one thing to another and not probably sticking at anything in particular. So that made it very difficult in terms of looking at it from a professional point of view. And I think if you haven't been to drama school, it does make it much more difficult to succeed in the industry. It's not impossible, but it is more difficult. So I guess, it was probably a lack of bravery more than anything, in that I was concerned that I wanted to know where my next meal was coming from, and the arts sector is a notoriously fickle place to make a living. And it's quite funny, when I came back to Sydney from the West End, I actually went to see a local producer about the possibility of getting some work in the theatre. And he said to me, if I were you, I'd go back to the law. So that was sort of, and he was actually made redundant not long after that. So that was probably an indicator to me that if I valued security over adventure, then I'd probably be better off to stay in the law. And it would be wrong to say that I don't enjoy the legal work that I do. I think it is interesting, and having trained as a lawyer, it is enjoyable to be able to use those skills. So I guess I was sort of caught between those two worlds, and but I've been really fortunate to have a lot of opportunities with the theatre in an amateur sense, and I've enjoyed them immensely. And I've had a few professional gigs as well, so it's been I've been very lucky.
Do you ever regret not pursuing the artistic?
There are times when I think perhaps I should have given the arts a better go. I often try to convince myself that it's not too late. You hear of people who do leave their professions and go off and do something that they've always wanted to do when they're a bit more financially secure. So I still think perhaps I'll take early retirement and just go around acting, playing old fogies and things for the 10 years. I think that would be quite fun to do but again, I suspect it would be quite difficult to get professional work, not having a huge amount of professional work already on my resume. So you are, and you have to be conscious of the fact that actors have given their lives to the pursuit of the theatre, and I haven't really done that. I've been too timing. So from that point of view, it would be interesting to me to give it a go on a more professional basis for a period of time before I'm too old to be of any use to anyone. So it is something I'm considering.
How old are you now?
I'm 49 now.
49. And you presumably been working as a lawyer now for 25 years, so you'd be quite financially secure. So when would you be thinking of devoting yourself full-time to the arts?
I think if I was going to move into the arts full-time, I would probably move back to New Zealand. Having come from there originally, it was sort of always my intention that I would end up there. So it's something that's sort of in the back of my mind. But in some ways, that is not such a sensible move, as there is certainly not the film industry that perhaps exists in Sydney, or though New Zealand, of course, has flourished as a filming destination, but there are not as many professional theatres. There's a few problems from that point of view, but I think it would be fun to just involve myself in the theatre in New Zealand, which I haven't really done for the last 20 years. So it would be interesting to go back and just see what's happening there. And the New Zealand theatre always was at a very high standard, I thought. They've really, produced some very, very fine actors out of New Zealand.
And some would say moving back to New Zealand would be more of a retirement plan than, say, staying in Sydney or moving to London or to New York or something like that. Is it worthwhile considering pursuing the artistic career completely, and then for a few years, and then if that does not work out, then go back to New Zealand as a failure?
A fallback position. I did wonder, about trying to pursue the theatre in Sydney on a full-time basis, but I'm just a bit concerned because of the costs of living in Sydney that it would be financially challenging, I think. And the same thing would apply, I think, in London, and of course there's always the work permit issues as well. And New Zealand, really, it has been the focus of a lot of filmmaking recently with Peter Jackson's work with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. So there is a bit of vibrancy in the industry in New Zealand, but probably not the volume of work that exists in Australia. And, I really don't know enough about it, but certainly from a theatre point of view, there's probably much more, or there's probably more opportunities in Australia. But again, I'm sort of rather limited in terms of the fact that I tend to get cast as English, stuck-up English, arrogant gentleman. So that's really my forte. So basically, that if those roles become available, they would be the roles that I'd be pursuing. So.
Let's say you're on your deathbed in 40, 50, 60 years' time.
That's very kind. Yes.
And you're looking back at your life at this particular moment. Would you be expecting yourself moments away from death saying, continue working as a lawyer for the next 5, 10, 15 years, or give it all up and pursue artistic career, considering you've achieved things that are very impressive? And it's quite common to meet people who say that you've achieved quite remarkable successes and produced great works of beauty. Is it not perhaps unfair to others that you're not pursuing or fully developing your creative talents?
I think life is always a balance of things that you would like to do, things that you're able to do, and the opportunities that arise. So there's sorts of, luck is a factor, I think, in whatever happens to you in terms of how you develop your career. I was never necessarily convinced that I was a good enough actor or director or writer to work professionally, particularly as an actor, because I did think I was fairly limited to certain roles. And the writing, I think, is something I would like to do a lot more of. I'm just not very focused. I've had a number of plays performed, and I've won a couple of awards and things, which I'm very grateful for. But it is something where I tend to write one-act plays, because the actual process of writing I find quite torturous at times. And I'm not a great reviser of my own work, so I need to discipline myself much better on that. Sorry. So there are a number of things that I could be doing. I really should be writing. There's no excuse really not to be. And I could be doing a lot more acting and performing, but it is always a balance with my profession. I always have to be careful that I'm doing a good job in my job, as well as doing the things outside of work that I do. And that's usually I can get that balance right. But sometimes, particularly with the theatre, it can be, there's lots of sleepless nights and late nights, and it can be quite a stressful endeavour. But generally only for a short time, just leading up to an opening night or whatever. So over those sorts of periods, I have to be very cautious that I'm still doing a good job in my job. And I think, as I said, I've generally got that balance pretty right, but I am conscious of it.
And for those listening or watching today, what advice would you give them if they were considering a career as an actor or as a writer or as a director?
I think for any young person who's looking at having a career in the theatre or in related film or whatever, the best piece of advice I can give them is to get involved actively in a community theatre or something of that nature, because you learn so much about the technique. And the great thing is that whether you're in a community theatre or a professional theatre, the lighting boards often are the same, the lighting equipment, and certainly the principles of the technical side of it. And if you have an awareness of that, even if you want to be an actor, I think it just makes everybody's life easier, because you understand what the lighting designer has to do, what the delays might be, that or how a technical rehearsal would run. All of that knowledge you can actually gain for free in a community theatre. And in some ways, I think involvement in a community theatre is probably going to give you more useful knowledge for a profession in the arts than going along to an acting class or something of that nature. Because while you can certainly be taught to improve as an actor, if you are aware of all of the other aspects of theatre, then you are a very valuable commodity, I think. So the more you know, the better it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Roger Gimblett, for joining us today and talking to us about your career. Best of luck with the future, and hopefully that consists of many great artistic achievements.
Thanks very much. I've enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
You.